I love it.
Okay, so today we are going to share some reflections and highlights from this year's Forward 50 conference. But what is Forward 50? Next. Forward 50 is Canada's annual digital government conference. The primary audience is public sector employees and leaders. This year they tackled the question, how do we use technology to bring us together? Obviously, this is a question that we tackle often within Civic Tech, both directly and indirectly. So we thought this was a great opportunity to bring some highlights of the conversation back here. Next slide. But full disclosure, the conference isn't just a dialogue between public sector employees. There are also different sponsors, including these four main sponsors: Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud, Microsoft, and IBM. So while it sounds really nice that this is a public sector conference, there is still money changing hands. So think about that when you hear about some of the conversations. Next. So before we get started, we want to do a couple of polls to get the temperature of the room. The questions may seem unrelated, and they're totally open to your interpretation because they're pretty vague, but you will see these 6 options come up on your poll. And if you feel like these 6 options don't fit, you can elaborate in the chat. Next slide, please. So David, I'll ask you to read this statement.
Yeah, so the statement we've got on the screen and you should have in your polls is basically, do you agree or disagree with this statement? I can't see it. All governments are or will be or should be big tech companies.
And I'll give it a second for the answers to come rolling in, and then I'll share the Can everyone see the poll?
No, I can't see it.
It did pop up for me, just another data point.
Okay, great.
Yeah, it popped up for me too.
I'm in Microsoft Edge. I don't know if it's the browser.
Oh, do you want to you can just put if you're comfortable with it, your answer in the chat as well, if you can't get in the poll.
Is anyone voting? I'm seeing 0 votes. So someone just let me know if you've clicked.
Oh no, people have voted. 14
Oh,
no.
I see lots of results.
Yeah, almost 70% have voted.
Oh, great. I thought people were taking a long time to think about it. I was like, yeah, it's a big statement. I understand.
Please,
cool.
Somebody click the button.
I'm going to end the poll. I apologize if you have not had a chance to vote.
Is anyone able to see the results?
Yes. So we've got, I can read it out. So we've got 4 people, 27% strongly disagree, 3, 20% disagree, neutral is about, so 2 people, 13% agree, 4 people, 27% strongly agree, no one, and I'm not sure about 2 people. Interesting. So strongly disagree and agree being the 2 most popular answers.
Great. This kind of spread is what we love to see and discuss later. Now, a second poll for you, Skaidra. I'll get you to read this one.
For sure. Yeah. So our second question is, do you agree or disagree with the statement, government should increase capacity for storytelling and sharing more stories from the inside of government?
In case Sam can't see it, votes are rolling in. We're at 13 now.
15.
Can you see the result or just the total?
We can see the results.
See the results, yeah.
As well. Yeah.
Great. Can one of you read the results for me?
Yeah, well, let's just give it like a couple more seconds.
Was the top one agree or disagree? Like the one
the
at
top
the
one is strongly disagree.
Rats. I screwed up my own job.
Okay, that's fine. We'll just
One of those strong disagreements.
okay, I can end the polling and just okay, we'll just so that was yours back on. Okay, so then in that case, nobody strongly disagreed. Nobody disagreed. Neutral is 2 people, 6 people agree, 7 people strongly agree, and no one is not sure. I'm just gonna say that this warms my heart. That's awesome.
And now Skaidra will
Unbiased.
prove you all wrong. Just kidding.
And then I'll prove. No, that's great. Very interesting.
Thank you all for participating in these polls. Now we'll hear from 2 Civic Tech co-organizers about their highlights from the conference, and I'll let them introduce themselves, maybe starting with David and then Skaidra second.
Hey, yeah. So I'm David. I am a Civic Tech Toronto organizer, but I attended as a public servant, as someone who works sort of in the digital government space. So I'll talk a little bit about that to introduce myself. Yeah, I work on Ontario.ca, which is the flagship website for the Ontario government. And it's been a wild 9 months, I'll tell you that, as far as timelines and getting information out and making sure like everything's sort of in its place. But yeah, I think that's all I need to say for my introduction is just my name is David.
That sounds great. Thanks, David. My name is Skaidra. I am also a co-organizer. I attended this conference and I also helped plan a section of it that focused on regional digital governments. So I'll be chatting a bit about that. And by day, I work at the Ontario Digital Service, as I mentioned earlier, but specifically my role is as an engagement advisor. So I help sort of teams who are talking about the work that's happening while it's happening, whether it be projects like COVID Alert, all the way to talking about self-assessment tools on public blogs or public events, all the way to supporting our Chief Digital and Data Officer. So really interested to sort of shed a light on why I think it's important for governments to increase their capacity for storytelling and working in the open. But David's going to kick us off first with his reflections. Over to you, David.
Yeah. 1 second. Yeah, so this is my lovely slide. Take a few minutes to take it in as I sort of chat. So yeah, I attended this this conference as a public servant, wanting to learn more about sort of the field of digital government across the world, sort of what other, we call them jurisdictions, but other governments in different places are sort of approaching, yeah, how digital government comes to be and what things should be digital, what things shouldn't be digital, and sort of all the nuances of how you go about that. So I was very excited this year. It was my first year attending. The previous years it was in Ottawa and I wasn't able to get time to go all the way to Ottawa. So this year it was actually really interesting being online because they were able to get in speakers from all over the world. I think it probably helped them with, they were pretty happy about this, which obviously they should be, but I would say, yeah, I think the diversity of voices as far as presenters was much higher than I would assume it was the previous year. I'd say partially that's due to the fact that they could pull in like presenters and speakers and workshop runners from around the world this time. So that was really exciting to see, and not have to spend a cent on flying people in polluting jets all the way to little old Ottawa in the middle of winter. So yeah, that was exciting for me to be able to attend. And yeah, I was just really interested in learning what governments around the world were doing to better support their people, especially in the context that we currently live during the pandemic. So it was it's interesting today to do a presentation on this. I sort of see a lot of Civic Tech Toronto presentations as like someone with expertise coming and sort of sharing that expertise with the community. So I'm approaching this more as like I had an experience and now I'm sharing that experience with you. So a lot of the questions I may just not be able to ask. And I also do have gaps in my memory around some of the things I'll talk about. So just forewarning, I may just completely forget something. But it was really nice to go for a week. And I said I'm a public servant. I attended as a public servant for my own like professional development, but I also couldn't stop applying the civic tech lens to everything that I was seeing at the event, which I think is a great thing, both for like every public servant to do, to look at it from like, how is this supporting like the everyday people? How is this being inclusive of people in the communities? And how is this really serving like, I could say like specifically people of Toronto, but these sort of communities across the world, how are we, looking to improve their lives? So with that civic tech lens, one of the things I sort of observed throughout the week was this friction that you see on the screen here between two groups. I wouldn't say there's a hard line between the groups, hence why, for those who can't see the line, I drew a squiggly line between two sides. So on the one side, there was this group of people at the event who are really excited and really jazzed about seeing more tech and more like big tech company practices in government. So whether it's like agile or like iteration and all this other stuff, getting rid of waterfall, fail fast or fail slow, or whatever it is now, they were really excited about the idea of like implementing tech within government. And then there's this other side who kind of took a more cautious lens, but specifically we're looking at it from the view of like, they're here to solve civic and government problems, and they see tech as a tool to do that. So coming from civic tech, I definitely fell on the side of the side for like, tech is there to solve civic problems. It's not something where the end goal is to add tech to government. So I just found it very, not entertaining, but interesting to see sort of these two views throughout the week. And it was debated pretty explicitly. I think the one poll we had where it was like, government will be big tech, or like government is turning into a tech company sort of thing. That's the future of it. That was discussed in quite a few different groups. So there was 3 presentations I specifically wanted to highlight on the next slide. The first was from Christo here, who is the Chief Technology Officer of the Estonian government. So what I found interesting about their presentation on getting chat right, Estonia's grand plan for citizen interaction, was the fact that here's Estonia, getting chat right, that means that they're implementing a chatbot is what they're doing. And as someone who works in government where we have like 5 or 6 chatbot teams starting up all at the same time, it's definitely an interesting topic right now for it is like an up and coming technology as far as government is concerned, and trying to figure out how to apply it and what sort of use cases there are. And I found, Christo sort of outlined this very focused approach that the Estonian government is taking to rolling this out, where they're going through like years and years of research into it and trying to figure out exactly what problem they're solving by having a chatbot and making sure it's inclusive. And I even asked what I thought was a hardball question about how many languages it will support. And they did admit that supporting multiple languages is a difficulty, especially because for chatbots, if there is any sort of like automatic generation of responses, the algorithms are not so strong for other languages that aren't English. But yeah, they did all their research and they had a plan for how they were going to roll that out. And it was just very refreshing to see, like, here's a new technology that many governments are looking at implementing, and here's a government that's implementing it in the most not cautious, but the most let's make sure this is solving a problem before we launch it sort of way. The second one I have here is Ronaldo, who's from the Institute for Technology and Society of Rio de Janeiro. And so Ronaldo was part of a panel of, I think, 3 or 4 different presenters. But Ronaldo specifically stood out to me as someone who I would say I look up to. So Ronaldo helped draft a policy for, this is the part where my brain fails me, drafted a policy for Brazil on like digital rights in the country. And I think that was launched in 2018. So yeah, he was really able to speak to like the difficulty of launching a policy that in some ways restricts what can and can't be done with technology in a space where, it's sort of like how much technology can we put in here and how fast can we do it? And it wasn't it wasn't an easy task. It took, I think he said from start to finish, the policy took 7 years. So here's someone who is like, this wasn't a no tech in government, but this was, let's make sure that as tech sort of rolls out, the people of Brazil have their rights protected, and especially their digital rights protected, online, privacy, and all that. And actually now Ronaldo's working, I think he said he's working, or Brazil is working on their version of like a GDPR and taking that next step of the process. I found that was another great example of someone who is taking it as like, how can this space of tech be used to solve civic problems and help people, rather than just being like, how can we get tech into government as fast as possible to just reap the benefits of like fast development and like agile methodologies and all that. And the third presentation / person I wanted to highlight is Beth, who works at the GovLab, which I think is based in the US. And their presentation was on today's problems to tomorrow's toolkit, the public sector and the future of work. So basically looking at what are the, what's the digital capacity that public servants in the future need in order to solve the problems of the future? Because yeah, basically the world is very digital now. And if we don't have public servants staffed up and trained up enough and skilled in order to solve these civic issues within the public service and within this space of like serving people, we're going to be in a lot of trouble. So yeah, I think Beth specifically as like someone to highlight did a really good job of sort of cautioning about like, as we're adding tech into government, we need to make sure that public servants are the ones equipped to be able to take that lens of like, how does this affect the people? How can we make sure this is inclusive? And making sure that as sort of, as government deals with both tech inside government, as well as within society, how can we make sure that the public servants who are hired to sort of work for the people are able to continue working for the people? So that was the three I wanted to highlight, and that's the end of my time. I'm going to pass it over to Skaidra now, who has a very different reflection, I think, completely different topic, but definitely still about the same event. So take it away.
For sure. Thanks so much, David. That was very interesting. So hello again. As mentioned up top, I did have an opportunity to co-plan some of the content that was actually featured at FWD50. So I think what's really interesting about the Regional Digital Government Summit is actually in its second year. I also helped plan the first run of it, which happened last year at FWD50. It took place in person, and I would say most of the sessions featured Canadian provinces and cities. And so this year, we hoped to do that similarly. We hope to sort of partner with British Columbia, Nova Scotia, but COVID hit different provinces at to different extents. And also there was an election brewing in British Columbia. So the team that was meant to sort of be in the spotlight and profiled had to back out under very short notice. And so what was really interesting is that FWD50 actually had connections with the California digital government team working on COVID-19 flagship website. They were meant to be featured speakers anyway, and they put them in touch with our team, and sort of within a month we kind of co-planned material about what are some of the common challenges facing states in the United States, as well as like provinces in Canada, and what are some of the similarities and where they converge and where the differences. So this was really meant to be a space for bringing it down a notch, like not just focusing on like government of Canada or like other countries, but really thinking about some of the interjurisdictional challenges, bringing it down a notch, bringing in the perspectives of provinces, and kind of focusing on 4 main themes, which we all sort of agreed were top of mind, especially in light of COVID and rapid delivery. So the first one was really exploring what it means to bring more product-like practices and tools into government, and this idea of driving product-driven organizations within government. That this was a featured discussion with Chief Digital Officer of the state of Georgia, Chief Digital Officer of Ontario, Hilary Hartley, who's a big friendly to Civic Tech Toronto and Code for Canada ecosystem, and the Chief Digital, well, not Chief Digital Officer in title, but is somewhat equivalent in the state of California. So that was a really interesting discussion. The topic of burnout was incredibly top of mind, and building capacity within governments to sort of build in-house and the value of building in-house for technological, I guess, products on the go was a hot topic as well. Then the second theme we landed on was enabling continuous learning for public servants, especially actually during this crazy, funky pandemic time, the need to really, I guess, upskill and encourage the sharing of learning as we're doing it, as we're learning, and this idea of learning by doing. So that was a really interesting discussion that brought in Apolitical. For folks who are unfamiliar with Apolitical, this is an like a sort of a startup that was launched in Europe to try and connect public servant innovation teams and try and also be kind of like a publication for public servants to talk and share out loud their reflections. But it's sort of morphed into a learning platform. And actually the Ontario government and now the federal government has partnered with Apolitical to create learning programs around how to be digital in the Canadian public service and what that means and what kind of culture shift that requires. So there was a conversation with Apolitical as well as a representative from Code for Canada. So Code for Canada, nonprofit, obviously like very much linked to a lot of the work of Civic Tech in Toronto and across Canada, but also the Code for Canada team is looking to sort of upskill their learning program. So that was one of the panelists in discussion. And then we had the Canadian Digital Academy in discussion as well. So kind of like a startup within the Canadian public service, trying to shake up the way learning is offered and produced within the Canadian government. Third session was on rapid COVID delivery. So we brought in self-assessment tool from Ontario's self-assessment team. We actually did a hack night on that earlier this summer. So we brought back Spencer Daniels. We also brought in a team at the state of California that was doing a lot of COVID-19 data modeling. We brought in state of Georgia, who developed a chatbot within a number of days to help the public understand where to get COVID-19 information and resources, and it's how it's been developed. There was also a fellow from the United States delivery response team that initiated a pandemic fellowship. That's I think it's a 16-week fellowship that brought in experts outside of government into government to sort of bring in product skills to help rapidly develop designs and support systems. So that was really interesting. But then finally, we had a session on storytelling and why it's important for public servants to have the space to talk out loud, to share out loud what they're doing, but also how important it is to tell and create the spaces for those on the front line, like those doing the work to tell the works, to tell the story. So it's not just, I guess, politically elected folks, it's not just deputy ministers, but it's like the servants on the ground level, the teams, and especially voices that perhaps have been not as elevated in the digital government movement. You know, how do we start to create spaces for others to have their say and their perspectives, and why that's kind of a key component of open data. Storytelling is a form of open source and open data. And just at the bottom is a picture of what it looked like to co-host something. This is my colleague, Tamara, who's from California. We had never met. We were sent lighting equipment. This was my first time like really understanding how challenging it actually is to run a virtual event. It was a great learning experience. I really learned the importance of lighting. Next slide. So just really quickly, I just wanted to highlight who we actually had on the storytelling panel, because I think it's worth noting. We brought together Rowena, who is the City of Denver's first chief digital storyteller and also created the storytelling unit within the City of Denver as a way for bringing policy to life, as a way to have government public servants actually connect with residents that are being affected by the policies that are being drafted and have their voice elevated. And she told a story of how the City of Denver like trailed the history of trans performers in the City of Denver, which had sort of been erased from like historical records or in like public libraries. And that was like so inspiring and so interesting how they've done that. Then we heard from Sarah Hudson, who isn't working currently in government, but she has a history of kind of telling the stories of public servants, and specifically in the realm of like digital innovation. And now she's a digital and data fellow at the Beek Center of Social Innovation, which where essentially she's tasked with sort of going on secondments with different public servants teams to try and tell the work while it's happening. And then finally, we had Ikenna from the Ontario Public Service, who actually runs an in-house podcast called Batteries Are Included, among many other things, as an opportunity for public servants to sort of tell their stories in an unfiltered way and then share it amongst their peers. So all of them brought in very different perspectives, but I think the common theme was that, you know, if we really want storytelling to work well, we have to build the conditions for it in-house, and we have to really just like resource it and make it a priority, because it's public knowledge, and the general public needs to sort of have an outlet into what's happening, and storytelling is a powerful way to do that. So I'll stop there. And I think David and I just have a few resources that we pulled together that was mentioned from the conference, but yeah, thanks for listening. And I'll stop there.